They say some moments flip your world upside down, but not in the big, showy ways you'd imagine. It's not all fireworks and drama. No, it's the soft, sneaky moments that get you, like when you're sorting socks or strolling down a hallway you've walked a million times. That night was supposed to be nothing special, just another Wednesday, the house so still you could hear the fridge humming louder than your own head. I was just passing by my stepson's door, not hunting for anything, not expecting a thing. But then I felt it, not a noise, but a vibe, you know? Like the air got heavy, like something behind that door was different, even if everything else looked the same. Before I knew it, my fingers were on the doorknob. I keep replaying that split second, that moment when I could have just kept walking, and none of this would have happened. But I didn't. I twisted the knob and eased the door open. What I saw wasn't exactly wrong, but it wasn't quite right either. It was just him, by himself, caught up in something I still can't put into words. It wasn't what you're probably thinking, it wasn't like that. It was the way his eyes met mine, like I'd stumbled into a private, almost holy moment he wasn't ready to share. I didn't make a sound, didn't gasp, didn't shut the door. I just stood there, stuck. Some silences scream louder than words ever could. We didn't talk, but something heavy passed between us, and I've been carrying it ever since. I don't know how long I stood there, maybe 10 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe forever. When I finally turned away, it felt like I left a piece of myself in that room, something I couldn't take back. And honestly, I'm not sure I wanted to. I know how that sounds, and believe me, I've judged myself harsher than you ever could. But this isn't about crossing some obvious line like people might think. It's about what happens when the lines blur, when a connection sparks in the strangest places, and you're torn between running from it or holding it close. I wish I could say this story wraps up neatly, with a tidy little bow on top, but it doesn't. It just gets messy, eh? After that night, everything between us shifted, the air, the looks, the things we left unsaid. I still don't know if I should have walked away or if I was right to do what I did. You might think you've got this story figured out, but trust me, you don't. It's about peeling back the hidden layers of the heart. He'd never really opened up to me before, not until that night, and even then, he didn't say a word. It was what I saw in his eyes that spoke volumes. Maybe I should backtrack a bit, before the silence swallowed everything. I'm pushing 40, married, sure, but most days it feels more like a business deal than a love story. My husband's always caught up, work trips, endless meetings, phone calls that stretch from night to dawn. He says it's for our future, but I can't recall the last time us meant more than splitting bills and sitting in silence. We've got a nice house, all brick outside, warm lights inside, always smelling faintly of lavender and polish. It looks cozy, but the warmth doesn't quite reach the edges, you know? Like a house trying too hard to feel like home. Dinners are quiet affairs. I cook, plate everything just so, but my husband's always half distracted, scrolling his phone. We toss out the usual questions, how's your day, need anything from the store, but it's all surface, like we're reading lines from a script we stopped caring about long ago. Then there's my stepson, 18, quiet, kind of a loner, with an artistic streak that makes you stop and notice. He's not just good, he's got this sensitive way of seeing things, sketching shadows or fleeting glances, the way light spills through a curtain. He's usually holed up in his room, door shut, headphones on. Around his dad, he's practically mute. They don't argue, but they don't connect either, like they're on different wavelengths, sharing space but never really meeting. With me, though, he was different, not chatty, but gentler. He'd hang around a bit longer when I was cleaning up in the kitchen, maybe ask about the music I was playing or mention a book I'd left out. Small stuff, quiet moments, but they mattered. Maybe that's what rattled me later, how those moments made me feel noticed. I hadn't felt seen in ages, not by my husband, not by anyone. Most days, I felt like part of the furniture, there, but ignored, familiar, but fading into the background. A kind of loneliness had settled in, heavy, like dust you don't notice until it's thick. You start breathing a little lighter, moving a little slower, smiling because it's easier than explaining the ache. In that quiet, he showed up, not as something wrong, not as a temptation, but as someone who saw the same silence I did and was trying to navigate it too. He never crossed any lines, not back then, but he didn't need to. His presence, his gaze, said more than words ever could. And that scared me, because the more I felt understood, the more I realized how hollow I'd been feeling. Sometimes I'd hear him chuckle softly in his room, watching something on his laptop, and I'd pause outside his door, not to snoop, but just to feel a flicker of connection in this house. We were all under one roof, but we were strangers in our own ways. I used to think I was just waiting for my husband to come back, not just from his trips, but to really be here, for love to feel alive again. But that night, standing at my stepson's door, everything changed. And the scariest part? I wasn't afraid. I felt alive. It was pouring rain that night, heavy, the kind that hushes the whole world. The house felt darker than usual. A storm had killed the power around 9, and my husband was off in Seattle for some last-minute work thing. I didn't bother asking why. I'd stopped asking months ago. I lit some candles, brewed some tea, tried to act like the quiet didn't get to me, but it wasn't a peaceful silence, it was heavy, almost choking. Every creak in the walls, every gust outside, felt amplified in that emptiness. I checked the locks, paced the hallway just to hear my own steps. That's when I noticed it, a faint glow under my stepson's door, not warm like candlelight, but cool, pale, like a screen. I stopped. The hallway felt endless. My skin tingled, not with fear, but with something pulling me forward. I knocked lightly, just once. No response. I waited, hearing a faint hum from behind the door, a muffled beat, a whisper. I kept telling myself to walk away, drawing that line in my mind over and over. But my hand was already on the knob, the door creaking open slowly, and I stepped inside. He didn't notice me at first, curled up on the floor, back against his bed, headphones on. His tablet's glow lit his face in that strange, otherworldly way, like he was caught between reality and somewhere else. He wasn't doing anything bad, not really, but there was something so raw about how he looked, so unguarded. His knees were pulled up, one hand near his chest, the other loosely gripping the tablet. His eyes were damp, his lips slightly parted, like he'd just whispered something too heavy to say out loud, and I went still. It wasn't what was on the screen that hit me, it was his expression, like he wasn't just watching something, but feeling something deep, something private, something he'd been carrying alone. When he looked up and saw me, everything just froze. He didn't jump or try to hide what he was doing. He didn't scramble to stop the video or cover himself up. He just locked eyes with me, his gaze piercing straight through, and in that moment, something passed between us, not lust, not guilt, but a kind of quiet understanding, like we'd both stumbled into a moment neither of us meant to create but somehow both recognized. I should have backed out, shut the door, acted like I hadn't seen a thing, but I didn't budge. I stood there, letting the silence stretch until it felt like it was saying something all on its own. He didn't move either, and I swear I forgot to breathe. It was like we were having a whole conversation without words, one I didn't start and had no idea how to finish. The weirdest part? I didn't feel like I was intruding. It felt like I'd been let in, not with words or a wave, but by the stillness, by the trust in his eyes. I don't know how long I lingered there, seconds, maybe a minute or two. But when I finally walked away, I wasn't the same. It wasn't about what I saw, it was about what I felt. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the rain drumming softly on the window like it was trying to tell me something. I kept replaying it, his gaze, the quiet in the room, my hand gripping the doorframe like I didn't trust myself to move. Was it just a fluke, a mistake, or was there something deeper, something I wasn't ready to face? I whispered excuses to myself in the dark, I didn't touch him, didn't say a word, just stood there. But the more I repeated it, the less it felt true. Because maybe standing there, doing nothing, was its own kind of choice. That's when the guilt started creeping in, not for what happened, but for what didn't, for the fact that I could have shut the door the moment I saw him. I could have walked away, let the silence keep us safe. But I stayed. Why? I've turned that question over 100 different ways. Why didn't I leave right away? Why did I stand there long enough to soak in the glow of the room, the way his eyes didn't flinch when they met mine, the way mine didn't look away either? The only answer that keeps me tossing at night is that some part of me wanted to be seen, not touched, not claimed, just noticed. It wasn't about desire, not at that moment. It was about two people in the same house finally seeing each other, really seeing, after so long. Because, honestly, I hadn't felt visible in years. I'd faded into the background of my own life, the woman who cooked dinners, folded laundry, smiled when she didn't mean it, listened but was never heard. And there he was, this quiet boy who barely spoke, looking at me like I wasn't just his dad's wife, like I wasn't just in the way. He saw me like I was real. I know how that sounds, how it might look to someone else. But from where I stood, it didn't feel wrong. It felt heavy, like two lonely souls in the same house had found each other in a moment neither of us asked for. The next day, I tried to act normal, brewing coffee, folding towels, but everything felt off, like the ground was just a little uneven. Every time I passed his room, my pulse would spike, not out of fear, but from this nagging sense of something left unresolved. I didn't know what to do with it, and I still don't, because that night changed something, in him, in me, in the air between us. Once something shifts like that, you can't just pretend it hasn't. It started small, in tiny moments you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. He'd linger in a room just a second longer after everyone else had gone. In the kitchen, he'd pass by a little too close, not obvious, but enough to make me wonder. Sometimes our fingers would graze when we reached for the same thing, just a fleeting touch, enough to make my breath catch, enough to make me question, was that intentional? And the scarier question, did I want it to be? He didn't talk much, but I could feel his eyes on me, not bold or blatant, but soft, like he was quietly taking in every detail I didn't even know I was showing. I'd catch him leaning in the doorway while I washed dishes, pretending to check his phone, not saying a word, just there, close enough for me to feel his presence. One afternoon, I was straightening up the living room and found his sketchpad open on the coffee table. I usually wouldn't touch his stuff, but it was just lying there, almost like it was meant to be seen. I picked it up, and there I was, sketched in pencil with his careful, delicate lines, not some glamorous version of me, just me at the kitchen table, head tilted, eyes lost somewhere far off. But it wasn't the drawing itself that hit me. It was the look on my face, a soft, genuine smile, not the fake one I put on for my husband. It was real, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt like that woman. I stared at it for ages, long enough for guilt to twist in my gut like something sour. I told myself, it's just a sketch. He's just a kid. I kept repeating it, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just a sketch. And I didn't feel like just anything. The worst part? I wasn't upset. I felt seen. I closed the sketchbook, put it back exactly where it was, and didn't say a word, not to him, not to myself. But that night, I dreamed of that version of me in his drawing, the woman who still had a spark, who didn't shy away when someone truly saw her. After that, pretending got harder. The space between us felt electric, like something invisible was humming, waiting to be acknowledged. He'd walk into a room, and I'd sense him before I saw him, like my body knew he was there before my brain could catch up. I wanted to ask him about the drawing, about why he looked at me like that, why he lingered nearby without saying anything. But part of me held back because I was scared he'd stop. My husband left that morning for some last-minute meeting in Denver. He gave me a quick kiss, barely met my eyes, and said he'd call. He didn't. The house felt heavier without him, not emptier, just heavier, like all the things we weren't saying had decided to take up more room. It was well past 1 a.m, the kind of late where the world feels too still, too heavy. The rain had finally stopped, but the air hung thick and damp, like it was clinging to the memory of the storm. I couldn't sleep, didn't even bother trying. Instead, I wandered the hallway, my bare feet soft against the cool hardwood, telling myself I was just checking the windows, making sure everything was locked tight. But that was a lie. Deep down, I was listening, straining for something I couldn't quite name. Then it reached me, soft music, faint and low, floating from his room like a whisper. His door was cracked open, just enough for a thin sliver of light to spill across the carpet, glowing pale against the dark. I knew I should have kept walking, every sensible part of me screamed to turn away, but then I heard it, my name, so quiet it was like he hadn't meant to let it slip, like it had escaped before he could pull it back. My heart stopped, and before I could talk myself out of it, I inched closer. I pushed the door open just a bit more, the hinges creaking softly. There he was, sitting on the edge of his bed, shirtless, his headphones hanging loose around his neck. His eyes locked onto mine before I'd even fully stepped into the room. The air didn't crackle with anger or fear, it was something else, something heavier, like gravity itself was pulling us both in, holding us there, breathless, suspended in the moment. I didn't speak, and neither did he. I just stood there, the faint glow from the hallway behind me casting a soft, uneven light across his room, mixing with the cool blue flicker from his laptop screen. His face was lit up in that eerie, almost ghostly way, but his gaze never wavered, steady and unflinching, like he was seeing straight into me. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was alive, thick with everything we hadn't said, all the moments we'd left unnamed, those fleeting glances that held on a little too long, the sketch he'd drawn of me that I couldn't stop thinking about, the rain-drenched night that had started all this, that first quiet moment that changed everything. I took a slow step forward, almost like my body was moving on its own, and found myself standing in the middle of his room, my heart pounding as I wondered why I hadn't turned around and fled. He shifted slightly, his body tensing like he was about to stand, like he was waiting for me to give him some kind of sign, anything to show what came next. And I gave him something, not a word, not a touch, just a look, one that carried everything I couldn't say, one that whispered, "I'm here, right here." He stood up slowly, deliberately, and for one fleeting moment, we were so close I could feel the warmth radiating from him, could hear the soft, uneven rhythm of his breathing matching my own. My hands trembled at my sides, my chest tight, my stomach twisting with something I couldn't name. We didn't touch, didn't cross any physical boundary, but emotionally, something shifted deep inside me, a quiet quake that rippled through my heart, leaving me unsteady, like the ground had moved beneath my feet. The air in that room felt different, charged with something fragile yet overwhelming, like a thread stretched tight, ready to snap or hold fast. I kept thinking about that sketch, the one he'd left open like he wanted me to find it, the way he'd captured me, not as the tired woman I saw in the mirror, but as someone soft, alive, smiling in a way I'd forgotten I could. I thought about the rain that night, how it had muffled the world, how it had made the silence inside the house feel louder, more insistent. Standing there, I felt the weight of every moment that had led to this one, the times he'd lingered in the kitchen, the way his eyes would catch mine across a room, the way I'd started to notice how seen I felt in those fleeting seconds. We weren't crossing a line you could point to, not something tangible, but there was a shift, a pull, like we'd stepped into a space where the rules we'd lived by didn't quite apply anymore. My hands shook harder, and I clenched them, trying to steady myself, but the tremor wasn't just in my fingers, it was in my soul, in the part of me that had been quiet for so long, the part that was waking up now, whether I wanted it to or not. I don't know how long I stood there, caught in that moment, the laptop's glow flickering across his face, the music still humming softly in the background, a low beat that seemed to pulse in time with my own heartbeat. His eyes held mine, not with challenge or fear, but with something softer, something that felt like trust, like he was letting me see a piece of him he didn't show the world. And I didn't look away, I couldn't. It was like we were both holding on to the silence, afraid to break it, afraid to move and shatter whatever this was. I kept thinking I should leave, should step back into the hallway and let the darkness swallow this moment, but my feet wouldn't move. My heart wouldn't let me. It wasn't about wanting something forbidden, it was about wanting to be seen, to be known, to feel like I existed beyond the routines and the roles I'd been playing for years. And in that quiet, in that space between us, I felt it, a connection, raw and unspoken, that scared me as much as it anchored me. He didn't reach for me, and I didn't reach for him, but we crossed something, I just don't know what to call it. When I finally left his room, the silence in the hallway roared louder than any fight I'd ever known. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide, staring into the dark. I didn't cry or pray or even blink for what felt like forever, because I knew the line we'd danced around was gone now. We were in uncharted territory, and there was no way back. You won't believe what happened next. The next morning was eerily quiet, not calm, not soothing, just empty, like the house had lost its voice. I got up early, maybe to convince myself I still had some control. I brewed coffee, scrambled eggs, charred the toast. I moved like I was following a checklist, opened the drawer, shut the fridge, poured the tea. But my hands wouldn't stop trembling, not even when I pressed them hard against the counter and tried to steady my breathing. He didn't come to the kitchen that morning, not like he usually would. No hovering by the doorway, no quiet presence nearby, no sketchbook left carelessly on the couch. His door stayed shut, and he stayed inside. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. Later, when we passed in the hallway, he didn't glance my way, not even for a second. He kept his head down, brushed past like I was invisible. And that, somehow, cut deeper than anything else. I wanted to speak, to say something to shatter the silence, but I couldn't. I was terrified of what might spill out of my mouth, scared of what I might want to say. That afternoon, my husband came home. The thud of his suitcase on the floor sounded louder than it should have. His voice carried too much weight, his footsteps too sharp. The house felt smaller with him back, like the walls had closed in overnight. He pecked my cheek, mumbled something about flight delays and bad weather. I forced a smile, but it felt heavy, like dragging a weight across my face. He didn't notice, he never does. I made dinner, and the three of us sat at the table like always, plates clinking, forks scraping, but no real conversation. My husband rambled about a client, numbers, projections. I nodded at the right moments. My stepson stayed silent, barely picking at his food. Me, I just stared at my plate, the food tasteless. Every time I glanced up, I found myself searching for his eyes, wondering if he still felt it, if he was trying to bury it like I was. But he never looked at me, not once. I thought time would dull it, that if we just let it sit, it'd fade into nothing, blur like a half-remembered dream. But it didn't. The silence between us didn't soften, it grew thick, solid, like a wall between two people who used to share the same space. I told myself keeping quiet was the right call, that silence was safer than speaking the truth. But truth has a way of weighing you down when no one's watching. I thought distance would erase it, but silence only amplifies some things. I haven't told a soul, not because I'm protecting him or myself, but because I wouldn't even know where to start. How do you confess something that didn't fully happen but still changed everything? How do you explain a moment that didn't break a rule but erased one anyway? Every night since, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I should have stopped it sooner or if I was already too far gone before I even realized. I question everything. Was I the grown-up in control? Or was I the one quietly desperate to be seen, to be pulled out of the shadows? Some days, I think I did the right thing, I didn't touch him, didn't say anything wrong, didn't act on it. But other days, like today, I wonder if my silence betrayed us both, not just him, but me. Because, honestly, I miss it, not the tension or the risk, but the closeness, the way someone finally saw me, like I wasn't just fading into the wallpaper. I miss feeling noticed, not in a scandalous way, but in a way that made me feel alive again. I hate myself for that. I hate how something so quiet, so subtle, still rings inside me like a shout. I keep telling myself, he's just a boy. He's your stepson. And he is. But in that moment, when our eyes locked and the air shifted, he wasn't a kid, and I wasn't a stepmom. We were just two people, two lonely souls, reaching for something we couldn't name. That's the part one can't forgive, not because I crossed a line, but because I wanted to feel that close to someone, because I needed to feel chosen, not as a wife or a stepmother or someone useful, but as someone who mattered. I carry that shame quietly, carefully. Some women carry regret like a weight, others like a spark. Me, I carry it like a mirror, because every time I look at myself now, I see the woman he sketched, the one who smiled without knowing it. And I wonder if I'll ever be her again. Have you ever let something happen, not because you wanted it, but because you didn't know how to say no to the emptiness inside you? That silence that grows when your life feels like it's slipping away, when the words you don't say scream louder than the ones you do, when your body's present but your heart's reaching somewhere else? I didn't wake up wanting this. I didn't plan it, but I didn't stop it either. And maybe that's what scares me most, that part of me needed it, not him, but what he stood for, presence, attention, that quiet pull of being seen again. Now I'm left with it all, the guilt, the confusion, the fragments of a story that never fully formed but still broke something in me. So I'm asking you, was this a betrayal, or something messier, sadder, more human? Please, tell me in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one who's stumbled in the silence, because it can make you feel so alone. Desire doesn't come with flashing warning signs. Sometimes it's just a whisper. Sometimes it looks like someone who needs you. And sometimes it lives in the quiet space between two people who never meant to connect like that. There are no bad guys here, no heroes either, just lonely people drifting through a house full of things left unsaid. This story doesn't wrap up neatly, no clean resolution, no redemption tied with a bow, just echoes and consequences.